Across the vast fields of America's heartland, a storm is brewing. Farmers are watching their silos overflow and their contracts vanish. International markets are turning their backs on U.S. corn in staggering numbers. And Donald Trump? He's having a full-blown political meltdown. What was once America's proudest agricultural export has now become a symbol of trade failure and political blame. But while the U.S. scrambles, Canada is stepping in to seal billion-dollar deals. This isn't just a trade war, it's an agricultural revolution. Before we dive into this explosive situation, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest breakdowns on global economics, political power plays, and America's shifting future. The crisis begins. U.S. corn faces global rejection. By mid-July 2025, the unthinkable happened. America's corn export engine, which powered trade deals across continents, came to a grinding halt. Decades of dominance vanished almost overnight. The world once looked to American corn to feed livestock, fuel ethanol plants, and stabilize food chains. Now, cargo ships destined for China, South Korea, and Europe sit idle at U.S. ports, some already rerouted or denied docking rights. Why? Because global buyers are rejecting U.S. corn at record levels. China's customs turned away over 300,000 metric tons in just 2 weeks, claiming the presence of GMO strains that suddenly violated new biosafety rules. The timing wasn't coincidental. Just days earlier, a tense G7 summit had seen the U.S. call out Chinese subsidies and food stockpiling. Beijing responded swiftly, and American corn was caught in the crossfire. Behind closed doors, Chinese officials described the rejection as precautionary, but analysts see it as a clear political message disguised as a health concern. Regulations, retaliation, and rejection. The backlash didn't end with China. Europe followed, introducing stricter pesticide residue limits that targeted chemicals common in U.S. agriculture. Ports in Rotterdam and Hamburg flagged dozens of shipments, rejecting at least 11 outright. And South Korea, once a dependable buyer, slashed its U.S. corn imports by 37%, blaming shipping delays and price instability. Taiwan and Vietnam, too, quietly trimmed orders, citing quality control concerns that mirrored official Chinese language. These rejections weren't random. They were a result of growing distrust in the reliability of American agricultural exports. Inconsistent quality, volatile prices, and political drama have turned once loyal customers toward new partners. The result, nearly half of U.S. corn exports evaporated in a single quarter. Argentina, Brazil, and even Ukraine have stepped in to fill the void, offering competitive rates and fewer trade strings attached. U.S. trade officials are now scrambling to reassure global buyers, but the damage may already be done. Collapse on the ground, heartland in turmoil. Back home, the numbers are brutal. Corn futures on the Chicago Board of Trade plummeted to 26-month lows. Storage facilities in Nebraska hit capacity, while rail lines reduced outbound loads. Contracts evaporated, and co-ops in Missouri reported a 19% drop in pre-harvest purchases. Even Gulf Coast terminals canceled bulk loading appointments as demand dried up overnight. Farmers in Ohio and Illinois scrambled to find domestic buyers, only to face rock-bottom prices and overstocked local markets. The 2025 corn harvest, already stressed by unpredictable weather, now had nowhere to go. Equipment loans are in default. Seasonal farm workers are being sent home early. Entire rural economies are teetering on the edge. The collapse wasn't just about lost profits, it was about lost trust. Farmers feel abandoned by federal trade negotiators and ignored by urban lawmakers. "We've been left holding the bag," one Iowa grower said bitterly. Trump's meltdown, turning corn into a culture war. As news of rejected shipments spread, Trump wasted no time. Within hours, he was raging on Truth Social, calling into radio shows, and blasting blame across every platform. At a rally in South Dakota, Trump thundered, "We were corn kings. Now we're corn clowns under Crooked Joe." Holding up USDA export data, he accused China, the EU, Biden's EPA, and what he called globalist farm killers of destroying American agriculture. But behind the theatrics was a deeper strategy. Trump used the crisis to galvanize rural voters, painting corn not just as a crop but as a symbol of patriotism. His message, "Biden is failing farmers, and only Trump can restore their power." The crowd roared, and conservative media amplified every word. He doubled down on the message with new campaign ads showing golden fields turning brown and slogans like "Bring corn back." His team flooded Facebook with farm state-targeted messaging, turning agriculture into a full-blown identity issue. What was once a market concern became a rallying cry. The hypocrisy and the history. Trump's outrage masks a complicated truth. It was his 2018 trade war with China that first invited retaliation against American crops, including corn. Emergency subsidies had to be rolled out to appease angry farmers. Now, the very problems he helped create are being used as political ammunition. Still, his narrative is sticking. In states like Iowa and Wisconsin, local pro-Trump farm groups are organizing rallies. Slogans like "Corn Lives Matter" and "Don't Tread on My Tractor" are showing up on hats and t-shirts. For Trump, this crisis is campaign fuel. Even some farmers who once criticized his tariff policies are back in his corner. Drawn by the simplicity of his message. Conservative influencers and YouTubers are spinning elaborate stories of sabotage, accusing the Biden administration of secretly favoring foreign producers. It's not just politics, it's become personal for many. They're angry, they're loyal, and they're mobilizing. Canada moves in, quiet power play pays off. While the US rages, Canada is reaping the rewards. With America's exports being rejected, Canadian producers have stepped in to fill the void. Ontario has seen a surge in contracts with Asian and European markets. Japan, fed up with US residue violations and labeling issues, signed a $450 million deal with Canadian growers. South Korea followed, cutting off 2 US suppliers in favor of Canadian grain with cleaner records and more consistent quality. A group of European buyers began rerouting orders to Montreal and Halifax. Canada's attention to detail, stable policies, and infrastructure upgrades have made it a reliable alternative in a world craving certainty. Saskatchewan and Manitoba farmers are also expanding operations to meet the new demand, while the federal government is quietly increasing support through trade missions and port upgrades. Even Canadian grain futures are seeing a bump, with investors sensing long-term opportunity. Without loud headlines, Canada is playing the long game and winning. Corn Crown transfers north. Infrastructure investments in Thunder Bay and the St. Lawrence Seaway are speeding up Canadian exports. Canadian grain moves efficiently, while US ports are choked with delays and labor issues. Buyers are noticing. And so are Canadian officials. Agriculture Canada praised the resilience of Canadian farmers, while behind the scenes, trade teams have been securing long-term deals. The strategy was clear: when the US stumbled, Canada would be ready to lead. Now, with streamlined rail-to-port systems, Canada is even exploring exclusive grain corridors with Asian partners. The momentum isn't slowing, it's accelerating. This isn't just a moment, it's a full-scale agricultural realignment. America's heartland left behind. Back in Nebraska, Iowa, and Illinois, frustration is boiling over. Farmers like Mark Ellison are losing long-standing contracts. "We were supposed to ship 60,000 bushels to South Korea," he said. They canceled 2 weeks before it left, went with Canada instead. Storage tanks are filling, prices are crashing, and relief is nowhere in sight. Farmers are dipping into credit lines to cover costs. Rural banks are tightening lending. Communities are feeling the ripple effects: less spending, slower equipment sales, cut hours at plants, and more pressure on local services. Even fertilizer orders are being delayed, and local co-ops are laying off seasonal workers. Families are bracing for a brutal harvest season with uncertainty as deep as the financial wounds. Political blame game or long-term problem? Blame is flying in all directions. Some point fingers at Biden for environmental overreach and lack of trade strategy. Others blame Trump's earlier tariffs and long-term erosion of trust. But most agree on one thing: the pain is real, and the fix isn't coming fast. Emergency grants from Washington offer little comfort. What farmers need are contracts, open markets, and stability. As Canada celebrates a rare export boom, America's growers face a hard truth: they may no longer be the world's first choice. The debate now shifts to Congress whether farm aid should be reactive or strategic. But while politicians argue, growers are running out of time, and corn is rotting in storage bins.